and see what happened.
3, 2, 1, 0.
There does not appear to be anomalies right at the moment.
What more fitting present could we make to archery than this on the day of its birth? America, the dream is still alive.
It's got to be a great lift to the morale, not only locally but in the nation.
It's going to be great. We're back on track.
Gentleman in the gray jacket.
Alert and lightning warning here. Wind really picked up. Staying in the area. Hey, look over there. See that? Is that? No, that's not that's rain. I thought that first might have been a funnel blast. Okay, I'll get back up in position here.
Tree lights illuminated the shuttle. The Space Center was buzzed with the news that a solid rocket booster O-ring might be found. This time, the suspect O-ring was not on the shuttle itself, the satellite it was carrying, a vital communication satellite called TIDRAS. This is what TIDRAS satellite looks like when it's all unfolded in orbit. It is the largest satellite planned to orbit the Earth. The TIDRAS plan to orbit from this shuttle is stowed right now behind me on board the orbiter. You can't see it, but it's behind that gray gantry. The question is whether or not its solid rocket motor that will propel it to a high orbit after Discovery drops it off in a low orbit is ready to go. There is no question about the shuttle's engines. They are apparently ready to fly. The question tonight was whether the shuttle would fly on Thursday, whether or not TIDRAS was a go. Flight Director Robert Crippen seems to say the shuttle would lift off with or without a functional TIDRAS.
Well, the first scenario is to go fly. These gentlemen and their team are out assessing where we're at, and as heard, they have a great deal of confidence that they'll be able to come and tell us tomorrow that they think they're prepared to do so, and I fully expect that to be the answer.
The final report on TIDRAS is due tomorrow. Meanwhile, the astronauts spent their day flying practice missions in their Gulfstream II jet aircraft. They had their physical exam day. They're apparently ready, and we saw them in the sky practicing late into the evening. We're going to enter a planned hold tonight at midnight. We'll continue until tomorrow afternoon when the countdown should pick up. NASA expects right on schedule. Tonight, NASA personnel proceeded on the assumption that the shuttle would fly, and work continued into the night under the... Air Force, which manages the IUS, Could the O-rings booster in Discovery's cargo bay also have cuts?
We're concerned because we want to take every step and uncover every stone it would take to make sure we've done everything humanly possible to understand any difference that we get.
It was examined very thoroughly by contractor, Air Force, and NASA inspectors every step of the way. What we found is a discrepancy on yet another vehicle. We just got to assure ourselves the same discrepancy may not exist in IU-7.
Cuts in a satellite booster O-ring would not directly endanger the shuttle, but it could throw the $100 million TDRS satellite out of control if the booster fired. So NASA certainly won't launch Discovery if there is a possibility of cut rings.
We are examining every aspect of that, man. The O-ring is not suspect at all. I believe the O-ring was actually damaged as part of the installation procedure.
This is Gene Gleason reporting.
NASA engineers making the final preparations for America's first manned space flight in almost 2 years. Officials say, weather permitting, the chances for a Thursday morning launch of the Shuttle Discovery look very good. But there are a couple of minor problems that still need to be checked out. Planned shuttle launch is scheduled to begin on Wednesday night. The weather remains the biggest question mark. CNN's John Holloman with this report.
Despite 2 last-minute problems, NASA officials believe Discovery can still blast off on schedule Thursday.
At this point in time, we have a couple of things still outstanding we're to look at tomorrow morning, but in general, the whole picture is very good for going flying.
Neither item is a threat to the Discovery or its crew. Both are described as minor hardware problems. On the Discovery vehicle itself, there's trouble with a tiny thruster rocket located in the nose of the shuttle. Its job is to slow Discovery and allow it to back up after it begins circling the Earth. The second problem was just uncovered Monday. It involves a rocket used to propel a satellite known as TDRS into orbit. The satellite is critical to communications between the shuttle and down below. 3 of them are in orbit. They'll replace all the ground-based shuttle track stations. The problem was found in a duplicate designed for a future launch. NASA officials are worried the same problem might exist in the satellite aboard Discovery. If that satellite leaves the shuttle, the rocket sends it into orbit 22,000 miles from Earth. Robert Crippen, who will make the final decision to launch Discovery, says his big worry is neither of these problems, it's the weather. If the shuttle launch had been scheduled on Tuesday, high winds here might have postponement. In the high wind and rain, the Discovery pilot and commander spent time practicing landing at the shuttle landing strip. They used specially modified trainer planes which land identically to Discovery. This practice will be useful in case Discovery runs into trouble on the way to orbit, and the crew has the option of making a U-turn and coming back to Florida. Commander Rick Hauck and pilot Dick Covey had no trouble. John Holloman, CNN at the Kennedy Space Center.
Space Shuttle Discovery awaits its scheduled launch tomorrow. The hope hundreds of companies and hundreds of thousands of workers will be riding along with the shuttle during its first flight in more than 2.5 years. Perhaps no one has more on the line than Morton Thiokol, which built the boosters for the Challenger disaster.
They unilaterally chose not to work or bid on the next generation of booster rockets in order to get this one flying again.
Other companies with a big stake in the shuttle's success include Rockwell, which builds engines, assembles the vehicle, and is the prime contractor. IBM is responsible for most of the shuttle's intercomputer operations.
The launch is currently scheduled for 9:59 Eastern Time, and landing will be 4 days and 59 minutes later at Edwards Air Force Base, and that will be at 10:59 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Launch. Charles Osgood looks back over the past 2.5 years and remembers another space shuttle, Challenger.
We had been to the moon and back.
Here you come into field of view.
Hey, look at the bunny step.
And now it all seems so routine, this space flight business.
That bumping he's become used to.
That we didn't even most of the time to remember the astronauts' names. It was 3 people or 7 or however many, and we took it and them for granted. Then came that awful morning of Challenger, when suddenly we were shocked into remembering that those weren't robots, not just numbers up there. They were men and women, human and mortal, flesh and blood, and Americans just like us. There was the test pilot from Auburn, Washington, Dick Scobie, the mission commander, 46 years old with a wife and 2 kids, the kind of guy who helped young Richard build not just a model airplane, but an airplane. The family was so proud of Dick.
They understand that you have to risk something to gain something.
There was Ron McNair, the black man born poor, Lake City, South Carolina, played the saxophone and had a black belt in karate. who was on the shuttle as Dr. Ronald McNair, the physicist.
I feel like this job and I were sort of made for each other.
There's a Ronald McNair Place now, Harlem. And there's an astronaut Ellison Onizuka Street now in Los Angeles, after the space expert of Japanese descent who had been in space before the Challenger. He's remembered, too, back home in Hawaii.
He told his graduating class, I dare you to dream and go out and make the dream true with sweat and commitment.
There was Judith Resnick, Jewish IBM electrical engineer from Akron, also flown before another space mission. The only unmarried member of the Challenger crew, she always thought there'd be time for that. Pilot Michael A. Smith of Beaufort, North Carolina, was a Vietnam vet. This mission should be easy, he said, with nobody shooting at him.
Basically, my prime interest is to make sure that we get up and back safely.
There was Greg Jarvis, the satellite designer for Hughes Aircraft from Detroit. When the mission was scrubbed for the second time the Sunday before the launch, it was he who took the New Hampshire school teacher out for a bike ride to relieve the tension.
Good morning. This is Chris McAuliffe, live from Challenger.
11,000 teachers applied for the one seat on the shuttle. McAuliffe, an Irish Catholic and mother of 2 kids, made the final 10. And then, when she was chosen for the flight, could not have been more thrilled.
When that shuttle was, there might be one body. But there's going to be 10 souls that I'm taking with me.
She took us all with her that fateful week. There's a stone now at Concord High. The nation mourned and came closer to share our grief.
Families do, we have drawn together to remember with love and faith 7 embodied in a very special way that dream we all possess. Dick, Mike, Judy, Al, Ron, Greg, Krista.
We realize now that ever we did take such people as these for granted, that it was a terrible mistake, and one will not make again.
Okay. Algunos expertos aseguran que en toda la historia desde el centro espacial
that is only approximately this time of the night. For the Atlantic abort site, Morocco, Seagull, and Iran, we're seeing a upper system moving into that area. It's not affecting the weather yet. We see a slight chance of putting some mostly cloudy conditions in. They are in the trillions or trillions of one. It was a judgment call. It's one of thousands of judgment calls that have been made in the last year, and it does set a precedent for later life.
Surely as well. There's a lot of talk all over the last 2.5 years that perhaps the rules were put into place were cautious. Perhaps there was too much work. Perhaps there were too many backstops.
Determined that when we understand the risk of your growth in our solar sector and extending this week, get back.
concerned about a range of threats at Kennedy Space Center and against the shuttle transportation system, one of which might be anti-military, anti-space, anyone that might be in a position of doing damage to our program. So it's a range of threats. As far as the threat that we might have that would come from the water standpoint, the U.S. Coast Guard does support us. We do have vessels on site that would be in a position of interdicting or responding to anybody that might attempt penetration. As far as the airborne concern, that covered under the range control system created by the U.S. Air Force, there are a number of aircraft that are airborne prior to and in close time to launch, supported by the Federal Aviation Administration as well as the U.S. Air Force and our helicopter support. So we feel like we've identified all of those areas of concern to us, and we have capabilities to interdict, otherwise assess, and detect any penetration that might occur.
Do you have people all night long out there?
Surely. Our program works 12 hours a day, and we have people that work 3 shifts a day. Of course, the closer we get to launch, we have people that are called on early shifts. So essentially, our forces are double as we get closer and closer to launch. But they, yes, are 24 hours a day in very remote areas around KSC, as well as those that are very visible to people who come visit Kennedy Space Center.
How many people are involved in the security?
Well, if you count all of those that are supporting the security as well as range control efforts, you're in the range of 200 to 300 people supporting the security mission.
Do you have sensors or other mechanical devices?
There are fixed barriers as well as remote sensors that are in different locations, and it's certainly augmented by roving patrols and static posts that we have around the center. Yes. I would suggest that you get in as early as possible.
3 in the morning?
Wouldn't be bad. We are expecting large crowds at Kennedy Space Center. Over 1 million has been estimated.
End of a dream.
The dream turned into a nightmare because as the space program wound down, so did the local economy.
Titusville became practically a ghost town, and around here the economy fell by about 50%.
Tonight, as the Discovery sits on the launch pad, there is new hope. The dream is alive again. And people here will tell you space flight is a gamble that must be taken if we are to move into the future.
We've done everything we know how to do to make a safe flight out of this thing. We are certainly aware that there is risk in programs of this nature.
I'm Terry Ruggles, and I'll be live from the Kennedy Space Center tonight on the Channel 10 News. Less than 24 hours from launch and all systems are still go. I'm Terry Ruggles at the Kennedy Space Center, and I'll have a live report.
Special control France 1. Class, special control France 1.
No, sir.
And GNC.
No changes, Mike.
30 seconds. GPC 3 is down.
Right, man.
Need the target. Go ahead, man.
As we're seeing a slightly decreased downward pressure on APU. No action this time.
Okay.
Fly booster.
Discovery, we're LOS at 30 seconds. We'll be in the car in 6 minutes.
Right, one. Will be delayed.
You've lost common.
We didn't get the targets.
Final flight.
Okay, well, Fort Reagan here.
The shuttle may look about the same from the outside, but it and NASA have been through changes since Challenger exploded. Changes in the people in charge, changes in attitude, and $2.5 billion in shuttle design changes.
What about right here? Is that a question? Should that be touched up?
Talk of can-do and giant leaps has been replaced with don't do it if you can't do it safely. Many of the changes revolve around the redesign of the rocket booster that failed and destroyed Challenger. Changes designed to prevent hot gases from leaking and rupturing the seals on the rocket booster O-ring joints. Landing gear and brakes have been overhauled, and for the first time, the mid-air crew escape system, a sort of fireman's pole that the crew can use to slide out of a crippled shuttle that's gliding to get clear of the shuttle and parachute down. It is far from an all-purpose escape hatch. It would be useless, for instance, during a Challenger-type accident after blastoff. While the new shuttle watchwords are safety first Everyone is all too aware this doesn't guarantee safety always.
Good, roll rim confirmed. Challenger now heading down.
Worries about spaceship and pay are diminishing. Excitement is beginning to grow as shuttle managers, engineers, technicians, and astronauts are finally willing to accept they have done everything they know how to do to get America back into space.
We're ready, the shuttle stack is ready, Discovery is ready, the TDRS, the operations port, and tomorrow the shuttle should return to its place in the sky and launch into a new era.
That is the kind of grand talk NASA has avoided for nearly 3 years of soul searching. Now, the only major that remains out of human control is the weather. Conservative weather requirements may keep Discovery from lifting off, and there remain literally hundreds of steps which must be completed perfectly. Perfection is the goal the space agency has set for itself. It is an impossible goal, of course, but it is a standard they will try to meet to make space as safe as possible. There will still be risk, a risk the crew is willing to take.
That's true. I think that there are worse things than losing your life. And I think that there are things that make putting your life out in the line worth the effort. And I think that our country, if you look at our history, is full of examples of that.
The 5 astronauts and the thousands of others who have worked to make the spaceship right are just about to put all on the line and make more history, to continue where the 7 souls of Challenger left off, to follow the road to Discovery into tomorrow. At Kennedy Space Center, John Getter, 11 News. At Kennedy Space Center in Florida, John Getter for CBS News. The protective scaffolding that has sheltered Discovery since it was moved to the launch last July has been moved back. It is just about time to go fly. This week before the first attempt to get back into space has gone remarkably smoothly. So smoothly, the man in charge of the program was obviously excited.
The space shuttle is ready to fly. The payload, the data and relay satellite is to fly. The inertial upper stage that's going to put it to geostationary orbit is ready to go.
The only overriding concern is the weather. It'll be close at best.
We expect the winds could be a slight problem. It will be 060 at 11 knots, almost a direct cross to the runway, and the criteria is 12 knots.
They are trying to lower expectations. Managers reminded reporters they have slated up to 6 tries for the launch over the next 6 days. The first should come 2 years, 8 months, and a day after Challenger. After months of soul-searching and fault-finding within the space agency, after a long period of national mourning, the mood of excitement is returning, a willingness to admit that people like to do daring feats. That's what crew member Pinky Nelson is looking forward to.
We're doing what people do best, and that is pushing back frontiers and exploring and trying to reach beyond our grasp.
It has been a long time since America had to reach that far. The rebirth of the space program is scheduled for Thursday morning. At Kent Space Center in Florida, John Getter for CBS News. Worries about spaceship and payloader.
Oh, did you?
What, for that? Yeah, it is. Then we get there. Yeah, well, that's the place I am right now. You said you want to get back?
No, I'm fine. I don't care.
They have come from all over.
All Massachusetts.
You can tell by the license plates at this campground why they call it America's Space Program. Texans have staked out this corner. Ted Husos drove all the way from Houston.
Straight. I stopped for 3 hours and stayed. That was all.
Why?
I want to say this. This is fantastic.
The outlets are from Switzerland. Are people in Switzerland interested in the space program?
Yes, very interested, yes. You know, we look to Russia, we look to the United States. We are in between.
By midday, both the regular campground and the overflow campground were filled to capacity. Camp without reservations were being towed away.
The astronauts in the space program has its followers, just like Star Trek and the Beatles and everybody else, you know. And wherever it is, they'll come to watch it.
Today, visitors watched as the booster recovery ships left port. Green ribbon has become a go-for-launch symbol on the Space Coast. Becky Lear and her friends seen all 25 shuttle launches.
Well, this is more spectacular because it's a rebirth of the space program, and it's rebirth for Brevard Council.
A lot of people interested in this? 3, 2, 1. Ed Trosky for CBS News, Port Canaveral, Florida.
Florida Congressman Bill Nelson was obviously enthusiastic as he prepared to enter Columbia for the third launch attempt. Equipment failures scrubbed 2 earlier tries. This time the glitch was not in the equipment but in the weather.
And today, 2.5 years later, NASA officials are hoping Discovery's launch won't be delayed for the same reasons.
Today, the winds look like would be acceptable locally, and tomorrow they expect about the same, but the clouds are probable, and I could not even guess as to what the criteria would be, or if it would match the criteria.
NASA's weather specialists have to make sure the winds won't be too strong, there won't be any precipitation at the launch pad, and that the clouds don't contain hazardous electric fields. They have to be absolutely sure, and for that they send up 2 different types of weather balloons.
They're sent up daily, except in test support. For the shuttle, we'll be flying a minimum of 12 radiosondes and 9 of the gemspheres.
The gemsphere measures wind shears and its partners atmospheric conditions. This data will be used in weather briefings for every major milestone left in Discovery's preparations for launch. At Kennedy Space Center, Susan Cole for CBS News.
Thank you, Steve.
In 1970, NASA designed a space transportation system that would take off like a rocket and like an airplane. They called it the Space Shuttle. It would also be reusable and capable of making 100 missions. On March 24, 1979, Columbia was delivered to Kennedy Space Center, and after almost 2 more years of delays, America's first space shuttle was finally launched.
We have ignition. We have liftoff. Liftoff, Columbia.
The Space Shuttle has called the most complex piece of engineering hardware ever. It has to be able to withstand extremely high temperatures when leaving and re-entering Earth's atmosphere, and it must be ready to go again within 2 months. The Space Shuttle was supposed to be an inexpensive way to launch important commercial communication satellites.
top-secret military cargoes, and special projects like the Hubble telescope, which might open up our solar system to science.
The shuttle is a workhorse, and we will see, you know, people forget about all the things we've already done in space. You know, we've actually grabbed a satellite, brought it into the PB, fixed it, and pushed it back out. And it's operating now. You know, the shuttle is state of the art. It's got a lot of good things that.
Engineers and technicians have been working hard since the Challenger accident in 1986, getting the shuttle ready to resume an important role in space exploration. Now it's just a matter of days before Discovery puts America back in the space race. At Kennedy Space Center, Susan Cole, WCPX, Channel 6 News. Discovery Commander Rick Hauck and pilot Dick Covey hold the lives of their fellow astronauts in their hands. They're responsible for landing the space shuttle.
The orbiter has, of course, no engines on it, and when it makes its approach, it has no energy to go around again. Once it's committed for an approach, it has to land.
Bill Booth is Discovery's eyes and ears on the ground. His team operates the electronic guidance system, which leads the orbiter through its landing. At T-minus 9 minutes, his crew has to be 100% online or Discovery won't launch. The astronauts will spend about 5 hours in the next 2 days practicing in the Gulf Stream. Now, the Gulf Stream is exactly the same as the orbiter as far as weight and balance and instrumentation.
Well, the system is capable of what they call an auto mode. The pilot, all he'd have to do would be to land his gear and put his brake at the end of the line, and the equipment would actually guide him down and touch him down electronically.
However, the astronauts prefer to take control of the orbiter themselves, so that means hundreds of hours making practice runs. They have to be prepared to land at Kennedy Space Center in case there is a return to launch site emergency. That would happen only if there were a problem with the engines during the first 4-minute flight. At Kennedy Space Center, Susan Cole for CBS News. For the past 2.5 years, Discovery's launch has been the highest priority for NASA, bar none. The space shuttle is vital to almost all of America's plans for space exploration. Those plans have been on hold since Challenger's fatal flight. The Rogers Commission called Challenger an accident waiting to happen. And as a result of the investigation, more than 200 modifications have been made on Discovery on everything from the solid rocket boosters to the 3 main engines.
Then we build redundant, and we test, and we test, and we inspect, and ultimately there's a little bit of faith has to go along with you when you climb into the machine, that the dedicated people have done their jobs and it's all going to work.
It has to work, not just for Discovery, but for all the missions to come. NASA wants to make sure there is never another Challenger accident.
Is worried about flight number 722 downstream. I want to make sure that we've got something in place that is going to keep the kind of checks and balances that we think are necessary on the system to have us fly a robust flight manifest and do it well and do it safely.
As the countdown clock ticks away the hours until launch, technicians and engineers are looking for anything that might prevent a successful mission. And the men at the top believe they have done their jobs well.
I've watched some testing and the retests and testing over again of vital parts, and I can surely tell you that shuttle is ready to fly. And I don't think anyone will have any doubts in their mind when it counts down to 0.
At Kennedy Space Center, Susan Cole for CBS News. They have called Discovery's launch a make-or-break mission. It's America's ticket back into space race, and it's also the key to America's future.
Well, it's kind of completing the job that the Challenger started.
Discovery's 5-member crew will be launching a $100 million communications satellite, which will help create a vital space network, processing and transfer data to low-orbit satellites and to other shuttles. NASA officials are looking to Discovery get the ball rolling again. They've got a tremendous backlog of scientific and top-secret military missions. So that means in the next 5 years, they plan to launch at least 49 times.
Well, I think it's doable. Certainly we're going to have to set ourselves some goals, and I'm very comfortable with that schedule. We'll try. We'll continue to worry about safety first, And then if we can safely meet that schedule, we will.
Congress and the President administration so far have supported NASA's efforts. Recently, a $10.7 billion budget was approved for the coming year, paving the way for other projects like the space station.
We have to get this program back on the road because we need the shuttle to build the space station. Very important. The shuttle is not an end in itself. It's the tool we use on this road.
And beyond that, someday comes our plans for expanding human presence in the solar system. That takes the space station, the basic part of it, and it takes the shuttle and some of that to make it all happen.
Discovery's mission won't just put the United States back in manned spaceflight. It'll mark a new beginning. A beginning with the same goals and the challenges of the past, but yet a promise for a safe space program in the future. At Kennedy Space Center, Susan Cole, WCPX, Channel 6 News. At Kennedy Space Center, Susan Cole for CBS News.
Here, the gantry at Launch Pad 39B was slowly pulled back late this afternoon. The shuttle Discovery now stands practically alone amid the Cape Canaveral marshlands poised for launch.
The shuttle should return to its proper place in the sky and launch us into a new era.
And so will the satellite in Discovery's cargo bay, a vital space communications satellite called TDRS that for a time tomorrow planned shuttle launch. A problem found in the booster. Another TDRS still in storage had worried officials here, but experts have concluded that the one inside Discovery is okay and will into a proper orbit. The other potential to go to the on-time launch has been the weather. Even that's cooperating.
Just scattered cloud condition. We expect this condition to persist for launch tomorrow.
The Discovery doesn't look much different, but in fact there have been hundreds of design changes in the shuttle, from the infamous O-rings to a new escape sum that will allow the crew to parachute to safety should they encounter problems during landing. But even with all the changes, NASA officials are making it clear none of this will ever be routine.
We are going to look carefully, naturally, at anything that's up in the count, and we're going to try to be smart about it, but we're not going to bend any rules.
Okay, I have nothing on IFB now. A live picture of the shuttle Discovery. The countdown clock is expected to resume within the hour. The 4.5 million-pound vehicle will be powered up. Weather right now seems to be cooperating. All systems look go for now. And Susan, you said right behind me is the countdown clock. It is now stopped at T-minus 11 hours in hold. That is, of course, a bin hold. The very important hold will come at T-minus 9 minutes. That's when all the top people NASA will gather and make a go or no-go decision. That should be early tomorrow morning. Meanwhile, technicians are very busy at the launch pad right now. They're getting the shuttle ready for that big launch. Everything looks good from here, Susan. Linda, you still there?
You continue to move to the northeast and not expect
We're a big concern with the winds. We're forecasting a crosswind of 11 knots, and the criteria is 12 knots. So anytime we get that close, we're certainly concerned with it.
Here at
Launch Pad 39B, the towering Shuttle Discovery, gleaming metal and technology, a test of the mettle of the men and women of NASA. You can feel the tension and the hope all around here. NASA, the can-do agency that worked, is out to prove that it still does at the Challenger, can do it safely. So tomorrow's scheduled liftoff is a new beginning, a product of technology, faith, change, to get things right again, to fly again.
Commander Rick Hauck leading his group out.
Discovery Commander Rick Hauck, a man certain of himself and, no question about it, in charge, says he was forced to change after Challenger.
I have to admit, prior to Challenger accident, I placed too much faith in the way we were doing business. And I made some assumptions in working towards some of my flights. And I'm less likely to assume. I'm more likely now to ask pointed questions. I think as an agency, we felt a little bit immune to having things go wrong.
And liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
Things, of course, couldn't have gone more wrong that cold January morning 32 months ago. But to the space professionals, to the men and women who topped these giant rockets and sped like human bolts into the heavens, danger always was very real. Perhaps it wasn't just the space agency that was too confident.
The public probably simply does not understand the complexity of these gigantic means. They are very large, they are extraordinarily powerful. At the same time, they're very fragile. The dividing line between combustion and explosion is a very thin line in these rockets.
Perhaps few people understand that thin line as well as these workers, the ones who build and assemble the giant external tank at NASA's Michoud facility outside New Orleans. Containing more than 1 million gallons of fuel, external tank holds shuttle's primary energy supply for its trip into orbit. There have been changes here, too. Procedures already tightened further. And workers like Mitch McAllister, in charge of moving the behemoths around the factory, know just what is line when liftoff comes.
I will have nervousness, and I'll have most probably beads of sweat, about the size of a $50, because I've met all the astronauts. And I feel for them that they're going to be riding on our external tank.
To Bethel Pierce, a production director in charge of safety and quality, Discovery couldn't be in better hands.
I have this hands-on experience that I do with the tank itself. I know how it's built. I can't make it fly, but I do know how it's built from one to the other one. And I know that it's good.
Everything is very optimistic to me. And I look for the future. Just like getting out of bed in the morning. I look for the future for a bright day.
Not everyone is as sanguine as Bethel Pierce or Mitch McAllister. Former Morton Thiokol engineer Roger Boley, who months before the Challenger accident forecast a catastrophe if the O-rings on the solid rocket boosters were changed somehow, says safety and design changes on Discovery haven't gone far enough. He may be one of the few Americans to miss the launch.
I couldn't watch another disaster occur, and the way I feel about the redesign, the way that things are culminating towards an effort to launch, my personal feeling is it's probably a flip of the coin.
Bosch's billion-dollar lawsuit against Morton Thiokol.
Fleeting thoughts, Challenger accident. And I'll admit that probably when we get the call from Houston, go at throttle up, which is a call, was the last call that Challenger had, that'll bring back a picture, I think. But a very transitory one, and we'll be back to business.
And tonight's CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting from the Kennedy Space Center. Our coverage of Discovery begins tomorrow morning with the CBS Morning News, CBS This Morning, and our special live coverage of the launch beginning at 9:30 Eastern Time. Till then, see you tomorrow.
the Today Show is off the air for Olympic coverage, watch CBS This Morning with Kathleen Sullivan and Harry Smith. You change channel, we'll change your day.
As far as the civilian and space program, are you just kind of on hold until they tell you in the future what a target will be that they put you in space?
Well, there's a lot to do. I'm very excited about that opportunity when it comes down the road in a couple of years. But my most important job is right here on Earth in the classroom and doing as much as I can to motivate my students and help motivate students across the country through our education program so that they can have many doors open to them for their own futures as possible. I guess, you know, it's something I'm very, very excited about, but my most important job being a teacher, I see this not only as an opportunity for all of us to learn more about space, but as an opportunity to show us how important education is in this country, and we need to give it all the support it deserves.
Feelings are running high along the Space Coast. Shuttle fever has returned.
Oh, I think it's great. I really look forward to it tomorrow. The first one I've seen live. Oh, I think it's really exciting. I've never seen one of these before either.
The green ribbons are up Titusville and Cocoa Beach, cities that border the Discovery's launch pad. Mood is one hope.
Look at the future it's got right there. I'm thinking my grandkids and my great-grandkids, just think what they can do in outer space if this thing's ever a success.
When Challenger's crew died 32 months ago today, confidence in the space program was shaken. The tragedy shattered dreams and the economy around the Space Center.
Initially, all real estate investment froze. All plans for more and future growth in restaurants, shopping froze.
With turn of manned space flights, land values are now up. Housing sales are strong. Jobs in and related to the space industry have returned pre-Challenger levels.
Now things are looking up. I think you'll see a lot more smiles on people's faces and a lot of anticipation in their hearts, for sure.
Tourists are again discovering the Space Coast. Close to 1 million are expected to watch Discovery. They're filling up campsites and motels the night before the launch.
I can't wait till it goes up. I'm really anxious to see it. I'm back from Richmond just to see this.
As Discovery soars into space, the hopes of the Space Coast soar with it. And most here agree the shuttle program success will help determine the future economic growth of this area. In Titusville, Don Dare, Channel 6 News.
We're ready. The shuttle stack is ready. Discovery is ready. The Tigris operations support. And tomorrow, the shuttle should return to its proper place in the sky and launch us into a new era.
After a lot of soul-searching and machine fixing, the spaceship is pronounced ready to fly. The last major worry, will the weather stand in the way? Not the rain, but the wind.
We expect the winds could be a slight problem as they will be 060 at 11 knots, almost direct cross to the runway. Criteria is 12 knots.
They say the rules will not be bent anymore, that if the wind is blowing 1 knot fast, they will not launch. But the dream is returning, the dream of exploring and daring and going the limits of maneuverability.
That a manned spaceflight program is the next frontier man has always reached for.
The shuttle crew, which has been training together for a year and a half, sleep now, awaiting an early morning wake-up call. They say they are ready. And before they went to seclusion, they talked of what they hope to do. They hope to remember their friends who were aboard Challenger.
Things as I watch the Earth go by, I'm sure I'll think of Covey and some of the other folks and enjoy it a little bit for them.
They would.
For sure.
They say they appreciate the public support that has grown so strong.
So I think the biggest thing that I would hope that people do is they're rooting for us or they're watching us is to maintain that support, not only for this mission, but for following missions.
They are focused on the present, but have an eye on the future.
This is truly the beginning of a new day of space shuttle operations, which will engender a much greater space program for the United States.
The shuttle is a tool that we need to use, build the road into the future.
And they hope they will not be alone.
I am very pleased with the way we have come back from this terrible tragedy, and wish I could take you all with me.
At Kennedy Space Center in Florida, John Getter for CBS News.
Sun tonight they began to assemble, 1 million of them according to NASA, the most since Apollo 11. The people from all over the United States, and they came to witness history.
I think something about a space shuttle.
Oh, I'm getting up in age, and I just think, well, it's time to go see something like this.
Why are all the people here? They're here to see a tiny dot, almost invisible on the horizon. That's the shuttle launch. And although it may be hard to see tonight, tomorrow, these people know it will turn into something spectacular.
The ground shakes, and you can see the flame and everything before you can actually hear the sound, and it's tremendous.
For the first time tonight, the sun set behind a shuttle freed of its confining gantry, ready for flight. Later, with the shuttle bathed by its spotlights, the Space Center took on an eerie glow as work continued toward tomorrow's launch. The countdown clock started at 7 o'clock this evening. The astronauts went to bed early. The technical checklist for tonight's countdown continues. It is long and complex. It calls for workers to add liquid rocket fuel to the shuttle's main tank. Technicians will activate the orbiter's fuel cells 9 hours before liftoff. They will begin an operation called external tank chill down at T-minus 6 hours. In the early morning light, the ICE team will inspect the shuttle, and as the sun reaches over Cape Canaveral tomorrow morning, the crew will leave for their spacecraft 2 hours, minutes before launch. People here don't know the details of all that, but they know that if all goes as planned, Americans will re-enter space tomorrow, and that's enough for them. I'm Dr. Peter Salgo for CBS News at the Kennedy Space Center.
Of our greatest technology, but in the midst of those steps forward, a practice as old as the caveman remains. Recording history with hand-drawn pictures. In Wendell Miner's case, it begins with watercolors. He is among 6 artists NASA commissioned this week to go beyond what the camera remembers.
This is an historic occasion. It's a return to flight. It's something that really defies verbal description. But as an artist, it's my job to put it down as an emotional feeling in a visual way.
That this is kind of a way to help turn this thing back into a legend.
Alan Chan works with oils on canvas. These sketches will become completed works months from now.
And I think what we're really doing here is we're bringing our interpretations to the assignment. It's an artist's way of seeing what's happening here.
Hundreds of artists apply with NASA for this chance. Don Hatcher is one of the many who waits for his day. In the meantime, he uses snapshots and imagination to guide his work.
I believe that an artist is the eyes to a scientist's imagination. We're able to visualize what a scientist can only imagine.
For the first time since this program began, NASA has expanded its definition of artists, now including musicians. Jazz musician Jana Bloom. She's recording sounds that will later influence a music score.
Maybe an engineer who's been sitting or watching launches for 25 years, if he could sit back and say, that feels right to me, then perhaps I've succeeded.
At the Kennedy Space Center, Kerry Sanders for CBS News.
Taking critical temperature readings of boosters sitting on Launch Pad 39B. If the rocket's temperature is too high or too low, it could delay the launch. The engineers are working at NASA's Marshall Space Center in Huntsville, Alabama, hundreds of miles from Cape Canaveral. They're using space-age electronics to monitor every twitch the shuttle makes. From Alabama, they can tell the temperature of the O-rings, the solid rocket propellant, and once in flight, how well the boosters are performing.
We're much more thorough. We monitor things that we never did before. We're very aware of the importance of the temperature limits on each of the joints, and we make sure that they're within those limits.
Bailey and his team of 8 engineers play a critical role in deciding whether to launch or not. If problems develop on the pad, these engineers see them first, and they're on the phone with Launch Control Florida. They're already working up solutions for several possible problems.
We've already hypothesized a lot of what-ifs, And we've gone through the scenario to come up with the answer so that if any of those type situations would occur, we already have the answer. We don't want to have to get the answer under a lot of pressure.
This operations center is home for 150 scientists and engineers representing the companies who build the shuttle's main engines and the giant external tank. Others will track the 11 scientific experiments aboard Discovery.
Larry Lewis for CBS News.
3, 2, 1, fire.
The Utah-made boosters are two of the more important ingredients in the shuttle system, but they weren't the only flaws in the recipe. NASA made some other changes too, all based on troubles identified in previous flights. Without remedy, some have been just as catastrophic as the seal failure in the boosters. Sniff lines, as they're called, now prevent gases from leaking into some 64 valves on the orbiter. The leaking gases sometimes produced false readings on display inside the crew compartment. Rewiring has also eliminated electrical interference on other valves critical for thrust. New systems prevent overloads and overheat on fuel cell pumps. Modifications prevent shorts and overheating in auxiliary power switches, a problem that developed crew members accidentally left to switch on.
30, 20, 10.
Landing was always a risk, but now the main landing gear axle is thinner, reducing brake damage and tire wear. Changes in hydraulics also prevent surges and a wobble in the brakes. Brake pressure on the orbiter is now equalized to all wheels, preventing skidding in case of a flat tire. Strain gauges installed in the nose and landing gear wheels monitor tire pressure during landing. On the ground, small corduroy ridges run the length of the runway at Kennedy Space Center. This also reduces tire wear if and when the shuttles land here. A more stable nose wheel now prevents stability on the orbiter during winds or a blown tire. The wings and mid-fuselage area are stronger and will handle more load pressures, a problem NASA worried about in previous flights. Smaller, lighter, and more efficient computer on board and continually monitor more data during missions. NASA always worried about valves that might accidentally close, prematurely shutting off propellant from the main tank to the orbiter's 3 main engines. Backup systems now prevent could have been another catastrophe here. Engineers also overhauled the shuttle's main engine, modifying twin and pump blades and seals. Plated nickel now protects one critical portion inside the combustion chamber. New spacesuits include more emergency backups. A slide pole takes parachuting astronauts out and away from the shuttle, and this inflatable slide provides a quick getaway if something happens once they land. And even before launch, crew members can escape from the elevated launch pad in this tram box. The boosters are better, but then so is the rest of the shuttle. Over the past 2.5 years, in front of cameras and in the newspapers, Morton Thiokol was the sacrificial lamb, while many of these other modifications took place quietly with little fanfare. For CBS News, this is Ed Yates.